Okay, look, I have a reason. Hey, it's Romania Black. I have a reason why I'm reading ahead on Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 4, and it's because I have a week-long trip planned in like smack dab in the middle of April. It's like not the first full week of April, but right after Easter here in the US. I have a full week that I'm going to be gone. And I record a lot during the week. Like I usually do a show per night. And so the fact that I'm going to be gone not only 7 days, but like 8 days. That we're like leaving on Good Friday, April 7th, and I'm not going to be back till like the 16th or 17th. So it is a full-blown trip. It is a long time being gone, and I've never been away from home from recording for that long, so I'm kind of in panic mode trying to get things set up for Patreon before I leave, being like, okay, we're good. And so I was like, I need to record ahead because these do take quite a bit of time to read and edit, and I was like, I need to get ahead on some chapters. And so it just so happened to be that like last week we had an amazing set of chapters, and this week I'm like, okay, we need to go ahead and read this. So we're reading chapters 118 to 119 in volume 4. This volume has been such a joy so far. It's been the biggest tease because Hua Chong is like being more and more flirtatious with Shi Lian, being like, come on, Gege, get it. And Shi Lian's just like, I don't quite get it. And it's like, and then in the meantime, every video, every week on this channel has been a damn cliffhanger because MXTX is just feeling the cliffhangers in volume 4. And so it makes it very hard to wait. I'm like, I really want to know. So I held off till Tuesday. I had the day off of work and I was like, I held off till Tuesday and was like, okay, I have my day off. I did get I got one comment that I want to talk about, and everybody else was like, thank you for the feedback, thank you for the comments, I'm really great, but now I gotta read these chapters. So, Anime Annie pointed out something really, really cool, and that's the idea that even though it's like a nice theme for these last set of chapters, even though the Windmaster is so popular and has so many supposed friends in the heavenly realm, when it gets down to it, there's really only 2 people that have helped the Windmaster. I mean, you could argue that Shiwudu is. You could argue that. But really, the Windmaster's 2 main friends are Shi Lian and the Earthmaster, Ming Yi. Like, they're the ones that actually came to the Windmaster's aid and were asking about him and wanted to make sure he was okay. And I'm like, that's kind of a big theme, that you can be popular, but your true friends may be few and far between. So it's like, And the fact that both Ming Yi and Shi Lian have been so adamant about helping the Windmaster, who's seemingly lost their powers, who may never have had powers. It was all fabricated by his brother. It's like, ugh. It's, brought up a lot of very conflicting and complex ideas. The fact that the Windmaster may have had their entire ascension fabricated has some serious implications for the heavenly realm. And Hua Chong's just sitting back there going, imagine that. The heavenly realm being corrupt? What? Because at the end of the day, it's like, you know, we've said all along in this story, to ascend as human, to fall as human as well. So Hua Chong's like, yeah, the ghosts know that they were human once. They get it. But the heavenly realm seems to be made up of a lot of individuals, not all of them, but a lot of individuals that think that they're better than humanity. It's like, you were once humanity and still are. You just got an upgrade, right? So I find that very, very interesting. I also realized, dang it, in chapters 115 to 116, I realized there was a joke there about Pei Ming, and until last set of chapters, I didn't really even realize it. But yeah, you know, Pei Ming shoved his sword in between Shi Lian's legs. It's bad, but I was like, I couldn't miss the opportunity to say it in this set of chapters. So, ugh. But yeah, so we're on chapters 118 and 119, pages 139 to 172 in the text. I'm really excited. Honestly, the first part of this book for me was like overwhelming. There was so much chaos going on that I was just like, this is almost too much. It felt like a sensory overload. But then like once we've gotten into the groove with the mystery of the Windmaster and the Watermaster, and all of this stuff has been going down, plus the flirting, plus Pei Ming's on a mission to go seek out the Windmaster and bring him back before his best bro realizes that he's gone. It's fallen into a rhythm, and now I'm like, okay, now we're on the roller coaster. The rhythm is set. I'm really excited about it, and I was like, I can't wait. So I may be recording ahead these next few weeks just because of my trip, but then I'm gonna have to spend like a week and a half suffering and not being able to record ahead and being like. So I'm going to record it just enough to get ahead of the game, just a wee bit, and then I'll be back to normal. So I'm really excited though, so I hope you all are as well. But this volume has been a lot of fun so far. It's been a very interesting volume. It's not been like it reminds me a lot of volume 1. In volume 1, only it's a much more chaotic, fast-paced version. Volume 1, God, in comparison to the rest of the volumes, volume 1 is so damn tame. And just so, like, everything's fine. Like, looking back, I'm like, volume 1 is the tamest of them all so far. Like, it's just like, you think of Banyu and the bridegroom in comparison, and you're like, yeah, that was cool, but... And everybody was kind of saying that at the time. They're like, oh, this is fun, but... And then volume 2 was just, like, so much fun, and introducing these new characters, and getting some plot set up. I still love volume 3 the best so far, because it's just... It's all that angst, but it's all that lore, and it's setting everything up, and it's beautiful, and it ties back, and it's great. But volume 4, so far... Volume 4, I like Volume 4 better than Volume 1 so far, and I know I'm almost halfway through, not quite. Volume 2 and 3 are still, I want to get to see how far does the roller coaster go in this. I have hopes that it's going to outdo Volume 2, but Volume 3 is still my jam, but this one is, which, you know, had Bai Wusheng in it, that's probably why. But yeah, so, I'm really excited, y'all. I hope you all are as well. But we're not going to waste any more time. I've been so excited to start this. I was like, let's just do it. So we're going to start chapters 118 and 119 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Pei Ming showing up at the esteemed Rainmaster's establishment being like, please, sir, have you seen a Windmaster? Like, okay. Chapter 118, Past the Heavenly Calamity. Waves surge in the East Sea. Ooh, does this mean that maybe the Water Master's calamity they have to face, is it a literal calamity? Is it the Blackwater? If it's the Blackwater, I'm going to be so excited. I'm like, yes, we finally get to finally see the final of Calamity. I wasn't flattering you at all. We're all busy planting the fields. Ain't no one saw anybody come by. Well, if that's the case, he trampled it. Trampled what? You trampled the crops that they so painstakingly planted. You'd best apologize. Oh, if I'm not mistaken, these are just some weeds, no? A belligerent general like you, what would you know? Wouldn't those of us who planned the field know better whether it's weeds or crops? Although Shilian could already tell the people of Yushi country were purposefully picking on Pei Ming, he too couldn't help but wonder whether those were actually crops or grass. I love that. I love that Shilian's like, I don't know either. But they think that he's being the pincushion. Yes. Pei Ming was the esteemed martial god of the north. Why would he apologize to a bunch of farmers for a petty reason? He ignored them directly and took a few more steps, raising his voice and shouting, Xing Shang, come out! Your brother is going through his heavenly calamity right now, and things aren't looking good. Something bad is going to happen. Oh, that's such a move. He had planned on hiding in the cottage at first, since Pei Ming wouldn't dare break in. Yet when he heard, he instantly opened the door and charged out. What? I knew you'd come running here. Oh! The Windmaster was startled, but immediately snapped out of it. You can't fool me! How can it have come so fast? That's too sudden. I thought it'd be at least another few months. Yet earlier at the Heavenly Court, the Water Master did indeed leave in a hurry, like he was needed to take care of something important. The Windmaster immediately brought 2 fingers to touch his temple. That was the hand seal for connecting to the spiritual ray. However, it was only when he raised his hand did he remember that he had lost his powers. No time to be depressed, he immediately grabbed on Shilian. Your Highness, help me ask, is it true? Shilian and Ming Yi both entered the spiritual communication ray, and sure enough, it was already as chaotic as a pot of stew, exceedingly worrisome. Most of the heavenly officials seemed to be overlooking the EC, muttering, my heavens, this battle stance, as expected of the water tyrant. But will this pass successfully? The stronger the spiritual power, the more heavenly calamities a heavenly official passed, the more perilous the next heavenly calamity. Shiwudu monopolized the waters, dominated the path of wealth, and this was his third heavenly calamity. How this trial would be easy, was easy to imagine. It's true. The ox was still blocking the path, and Pei Ming couldn't force himself through, so he called out from afar, "You're not a child anymore." Who would lie to you about something like this? Passing a heavenly calamity isn't like planning a dinner, you know. You think there's time for you to change to new robes before it happens? It comes as it wills, without warning. He's currently above the East Sea, and the waves are surging. No one can enter and none can get out. He was just past battling the waves when someone reported that you ran away, so how could he possibly focus on passing his trial? Then why don't you hurry and tell him I'm at Yushi country? Shilian listened to the direct relay of the situation in the communication ring and said, "It's no use. The entire area where the Lord Watermaster is passing through the trial is enveloped with a layer of wild spiritual power. He's probably in disarray right now. No one can reach him." "Well, take me to him." "Come." "Oh, no. But Ming Yi flashed over, blocking the Windmaster's way, his expression dark. "Mingzhong, what is it?" He remained solemnly silent, but Shilian could guess what he was thinking and why he had to stop the Windmaster. Was it really the right thing to do? To help Shiwudu pass his heavenly calamity? If the changing of fates was true, then the Watermaster must receive punishment of equal gravity. Then was it really appropriate to help him level up before looking into his due culpability? That he could guess this was also because Shilian himself was pondering the same question. The Windmaster hesitated for a moment, but then exhaled a long breath. "Mingzhong, I thank you. But no matter what, I'm still worried, so let's just worry about passing his trial first." Then he rushed to Pei Ming's side and turned his head back. "Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Lord Rainmaster. Thank you, Ox. Thanks, everyone. I'll repay this one day." Then the two hurried away. "Ah, damn it!" Ming-Yi stayed where he was for a moment before following after them. Shilian watched their retreating backs, but he didn't move. Huachong stepped out of the cottage leisurely. "Gege's not going?" After some thought, Shilian shook his head, and he said slowly, "This affair is beyond me. I can't help. Let's just see how they'll solve this themselves first." Man, what a change! What a change from Shilian rushing in to help them no matter what, to finally stepping back and being like, this is something beyond me. The Windmaster stood in the middle of it all, yet he still couldn't come around to realize what he should do, so Shilian was also feeling a little awkward. Although Shilian could understand why the Watermaster did what he did, he didn't agree with the method he employed. The ideal conclusion would be for Shiwudu to admit the crimes himself and go forward to receive punishment. Ming-Yi probably also wanted the same thing, which is why he stopped the Windmaster. However, based on the Watermaster's proud, domineering arrogance, that was most likely impossible. Having sat in such a high position for so many years, no one would want to come down willingly. If this was anyone else, Shilian would probably report this affair to the Heavenly Court immediately. But when he remembered the Windmaster's warm-hearted friendship, while his older brother was facing a dire situation, Shilian couldn't turn his back on the Windmaster and kick a person when they're already down, uncaring for past affections. Thus, the only thing he could do was to sit back and watch how they would take care of this themselves. However, what they should end up doing was untoward. If what they should end up doing was untoward. So he's like, I'm going to sit back and see if they do the right thing. But if they don't, then I might step in. Having thought on this point, he turned to Huachong with a bitter smile. "So long, your advice from before is probably right." This whole thing about not getting involved. Huachong smiled and was about to speak when Shilian's expression changed suddenly. Within the spiritual ray came Lingwen's voice. "What? Hundreds of fishermen boats got dragged in. It had to be right now?" "Fishermen? Dragged in where? The East Sea?" If it was said earlier that the communication was chaotic as a pot of stew, then the stew had just toppled over on the ground and fed the dogs. There was no break in Lingwen's responses, and her voice was still considered collected. "Excuse me, which martial god is on duty? Pei?" Pei Ming was in the communication array and responded, "Don't worry. I have the Windmaster with me and we're rushing over. Lord Earthmaster is here too. You just figure out exactly how many people got pulled into the storm and we can bring them all back. We'll try not to lose a single one." "Then thanks for your trouble." Lord Watermaster blew out and magnified the spiritual arena, allowing no one to enter the perimeter of this trial. Any heavenly officials from the middle court would definitely be blown to smithereens if they try to go. The heavenly officials from the upper court can maybe try and break through the barrier. The number of people pulled in is probably over 200. So just you two might not be enough. We'll need another martial god. Which highness is present right now? General Nangyang, General Shu, Zhang Jin. Someone responded, weren't those two generals placed in confinement for destroying the heavenly court? They won't be able to heed the call. Where's Tai Hua? Has His Highness Tai Hua returned? No, he's been out. Qi Ying, oh, who knows where he ran off to? He blocks every communication and listens to no one. My lord, you already know this. Other than those few, there weren't many martial gods who were worth a dime. Although anxious, Shilian still couldn't help but feel a little woeful. Was the aura of his scrap-collecting godhood so strong that everyone forgot he came from a martial background? He responded hastily. Me, I'm present. Let's go. I'm just rescuing the fishermen in the East Sea, right? Your Highness, the winds and waves of the East Sea are raging right now. Your spiritual power only works at times. What if? It's nothing. I finished in all 4 seas and never once was it not storming. I've often drifted on the sea for over half a month at a time, so I'm very used to it. All the officials couldn't help but wonder, you've done that too? Just what else have you done? The situation was dire and didn't allow room for more thought, so Lingwen acquiesced. Very well. Then thank you for the trouble. General Pei, coordinate yourself. Very good. Shilian closed the communication ray and turned to Huachong. Sanlong, over at the EC. Unexpectedly, the moment he turned his head, he saw Huachong had already changed into a refreshing fisherman disguise. So Pei Ming didn't even really know he was there. Oh, okay. It's a fisherman disguise. He tossed up the dice and caught them as they fell. He's going to give Shilian power, right? His other hand was on the door, and he said straightforwardly, let's go. Shilian was taken aback, but soon smiled and replied, all right, and followed. When the door opened, what appeared wasn't the interior of a cottage, but the expanse of a gloomy seashore. The two emerged from a small fisherman's shed on the beach. That little shed was the most used connection point for the distance shortening array on the East Sea. Beyond the beach was the boundless sea that stretched to the ends of the horizon. The beach was gray, not because the sand was gray, but because the skies were gray and the sea was gray also. Gloom pressed down, black clouds rolled. The malaise was oppressing and suffocating. From time to time, a giant wave would surge in the distant sea, like a magnificent fortress wall rising from the flat ground, and it would soon collapse. There were also water pillars like dragons, roaring into the sky like a tornado, thrashing and wild. They too would collapse once risen. Lightning crawled chillingly across the skies, twisted and savage. There was a large, brand new ship berthed by the beach. There was nowhere to perch upon the sea, and should they float in the air, they just might be struck by lightning. So there needed to be a boat. Naturally, this ship wasn't an ordinary ship. The Windmaster, Pei Ming, and Ming Yi were already on the ship. Why is the Windmaster there? They have no power. Aren't they going to get blown to smithereens? And the moment they saw Huachong and Shilian exit the fisherman's shed, Pei Ming called out, Your Highness! The Windmaster almost sighed. Your Highness, I'm sorry for the trouble. I truly am. Shilian boarded the ship and says, Duty calls. How's the ship? Pei Ming noticed behind him Huachong, who had his arms crossed, looking quite at ease. He warned, those unrelated must leave. This Tempest isn't a joke. Huachong was now dressed in plain, patched clothes, yet it still couldn't hide away his handsome intelligence, appearing like a good-looking little fisherman. I'm not anyone unrelated. I'm only following my highness. Shilian said too, he's from my palace. Oh my god, oh my god. However, Pei Ming already flashed his sword, unrelenting and determined to stand down. Shilian hadn't yet responded, but Huachong already answered with an abnormal determination. No, I must go with you this time. Both sides were only in a stalemate for a moment, but the Windmaster was impatient and turned to Pei Ming. General Pei, this man is fine. Let's just go. I'm like, surely General Pei realizes it's Huachong. If he doesn't, I want to see his reaction. During their exchange, a frightening lightning struck down violently from the ends of the skies upon the surface of the sea. The lightning current coursed through the waters and crackled outward, turning the sea into an aqua color, like a giant heart suddenly started pulsating and breathing. Ooh! The sight was impressive, but at the same time terrifying. Pei Ming didn't want to wait any longer and shouted, Start! The ship gave a violent shake, and with the rumbling sounds of the shaft turning, the ship started steering itself without any manual control. It left the beach, diving deep into the sea with a great speed. Amidst the flashing lightning and roaring thunder, the ship opened a path between the crashing waves. The storm might be big, But Shi Lian, Hua Chong, Pei Ming, and Ming Yi all stood steadily. It was only with Ming Yi's support that the Windmaster hadn't fallen over. Oh my gosh, the fact the Windmaster has Ming Yi's arms around him. Ah! Okay. It's tolerable right now, but how things are afar will be hard to say, Pei Ming said. The ship was already going at an extremely fast pace, parting the waves in large splashes. Yet the Windmaster still asked, "Can't this go any faster?" Running this ship burns spiritual power. Okay, this is already the fastest it can go. The Windmaster clenched his right fist. That hand used to hold the Windmaster fan that he could have used. With but one swing, it could have provided a tailwind, making the ship go at least 4 times faster. Yet now the hand was empty, and he couldn't help but exhale a long sigh. Just then, Hua Chong tapped Shi Lian lightly, speaking in a low voice. "Gege." Shi Lian whipped around, his eyes widened. Upon the sea, about 30 meters out, there was a small fishing boat whirling in the waves. There seemed to be a few figures crying out for help, but their cries were swallowed by the waves. The fishermen in distress. This was the reason why he was here. Ru Yi flew out and wrapped those fishermen around the waist and pulled them up. When those fishermen's feet reached the platform of the ship, their legs almost gave out. But Pei Ming immediately opened the door of one of the cabins and threw them in. When those fishermen opened the door again, they would find themselves back on shore. Oh, that's cool. I like that. Just as Hua Chong and Shi Lian fished up 30 to 40 fishermen, the ship was also staggeringly reaching the center of the Tempest. At that very moment, there were plenty of heavenly officials overlooking this horrifying scene from afar, and there were surely many mortals who were in awe of the power of heaven. The lightning striking at the ship was increasing. The lightning was attracted to spiritual power and would pursue and strike at those with strong powers. This is why one should stay far, far away when another is passing through their heavenly calamity, lest they fall victim. This is really cool. I like this. Right now, the Windmaster was mortal, and Shi Lian's spiritual power was only enough for him to communicate through the array, and Hua Chong had no need to use his power, so they were tucked away nicely. Thus, the lightning was focused on greeting Pei Ming alone. Many times he struck the lightning back, bluntly with his sword, his blade easy. With such a show of skill, Shi Lian was quite impressed. If this was a heavenly official from the middle court, not only would they be running away with the lightning at their tails, they wouldn't be able to strike back either, which was why they couldn't be permitted to come. After crossing the border, soon after, the Windmaster suddenly yelled, "Gay!" Shi Lian whipped his head up, and sure enough, amidst 7 or 8 roaring water dragon pillars, he saw Shi Wudu hanging in the skies, his white robes fluttering, his hands in the formation of a battle hand seal. Although his figure was still pressing the waves, he seemed to be unfocused, his imposing powers unsteady. Those frenzied water dragons would seize every chance to get closer time and time again, waiting for the opportune moment to devour him whole. And each time he only just dodged by a breath. The ship was miles away from him. If the Windmaster fan was still usable, then Shi Qingshang could have pushed the waves down by a notch. In his current mortal body, even his voice couldn't reach very far. He could only watch in distress. That moment, Pei Ming spoke. His voice was broadcasted powerfully and widely. "Water Master Zhang, Qingshang is found." Just as the words left his lips, Shi Wudu opened his eyes. At the same time, another giant wave surged to the skies and crashed back down. The ship was thrown high into midair, but it didn't keep up with the speed of the collapsing waters. It hung in the air for a brief second before falling rapidly. Shi Lian used the 1,000-pound spell to steady his form and grabbed tightly onto Hua Chong's hand. "Watch out!" It was a funny feeling. Hua Chong was clearly taller than him, and it took him no effort to hold Shi Lian up with one hand, yet Shi Lian always felt that he was light as a feather. Like if he didn't pay attention, Hua Chong would disappear. So Shi Lian's grasp was firm and tight. Hua Chong too clutched his hand back at the same time. "Oh, shut up! Oh my God!" On the other side, Pei Ming called out, "Water Master Zhang, focus! If you don't push the waves down, your little brother will drown before your eyes." Shi Wudu saw the ship in the distance and heard his words. Gloom flashed on his face, and his hand seal suddenly changed, erupting a spiritual barrier from around him. The water dragons that had been circling him were suddenly struck, exploding in a deluge, crashing down soundly into the waters. The raindrops were like rocks banging against the deck, smacking the bodies painfully. However, after this was over, the storm had also slowed and calmed somewhat. Shi Wudu slowly descended and landed on the ship. Everyone was already drenched from head to toe like drowned dogs. The Windmaster wiped his face and mumbled with trepidation, "Gay." Shi Shiwudu's face was still dark and he strode over in large steps. I told you to stay put, but you had to go run around. If I die from anger, would you be happy then? The Windmaster really didn't know what to say to that. When he couldn't see his brother, he'd worry, but now they'd seen him, he'd remembered the whole business. Something in his heart just couldn't accept it. I'm only just, In the end, he scratched his head and sighed. As long as you passed your trial, that's all that mattered. I still think. Who said my trial is over? Wasn't that it? With his hands, Pei Ming used all the water to slick back his hair. Don't be too happy too soon. This is your brother's third heavenly calamity. It's not going to be that easy. It'll take at least 7 days and 7 nights. Just now is nothing more than the opening act. Truth be told, even if this was the first heavenly calamity, it wouldn't be that easy either. Thinking back, the heavenly calamity that the Windmaster passed was greatly discounted compared to everyone else's. He must have come to that conclusion as his face grew glum. Shilian was still concerned with the goal of this journey and asked in a spiritual communication array, Ling Wen, we've entered the area where Lord Watermaster is passing his heavenly calamity. Can you point us to where the fishermen who have been dragged into the storm are? Please wait a moment, Ling Wen replied. After a while she said, this is troublesome. There are 261 fishermen who have been pulled into the parameters of the heavenly calamity today, and they're scattered all over the place. She didn't say much more before her voice was breaking up, and Shilian couldn't really hear her anymore. What's wrong, Li Wen? He thought maybe his power were used up, yet when he looked up and saw Pei Ming's face, it was obvious he was experiencing the same thing. The group hadn't had time to talk when Shilian saw, not far away from the surface of the sea, more broken little boats. Maybe the aftershock of the opening round were too great and affected spiritual communication. It might get better in a bit. Ling Wen said there were 261 fishermen that had been scattered. Let's just save as much as we can. Naturally, no one objected. Pei Ming spoke up. Watermaster Zhang, why don't you go inside and rest for a bit? The trial has only just started. Who knows when more rounds will come? You're pretty unlucky this time to have involved so many mortals. The Watermaster seemed to be somewhat tired indeed. He inclined his head and pushed open the door of another cabin and went inside to meditate. The Windmaster seemed to want to say something serious to him, but since the heavenly calamity wasn't over, it wasn't the right time to speak. He could only swallow his words and happily go to the side with Ming Yi. However, Shiwudu opened his eyes again and said sharply, don't go running around. Come and sit right here. And so the Windmaster could only kneel next to Shiwudu. After more than half a day, as the night deepened, the ship floated to a deeper part of the East Sea. Although the spiritual communication was still broken, working at times and not at others, it could be used tentatively. At that time, Shilian and company had already rescued over 200 fishermen. Those fishermen had gone to sea to fish as always, but who knew such stormy winds and waves would surge so suddenly, and it pulled them too far into the waters. If they were by themselves, there would have been no way they could have drifted back. If they should float about for several days and nights, they might very well all die from starvation or dehydration, dried under the sun into desiccated corpses. To be suddenly saved, it was truly to find hope at the brink of death, and they were all overjoyed. To just drift in the sea like this, who knew how many days and nights it would be before all the fishermen could be rescued, and who knew when Shiwudu's third heavenly calamity would officially start? There could be danger at a moment's notice. In such a situation, Pei Ming still acted the same. In the evening, when they rescued a few fisherman girls, so scared their eyes were blurry from tears, oh my God, he held them in his embrace and soothed them with a gentle voice. A true show of a honeyed romance, affectionate and charming. It was only after he charmed the girls they sent them off to the cabin, and those girls were all reluctant to leave, hoping when they opened the door once more he would still be there. Shiwudu had been meditating for a while now, his strength restored and his face looking much better. He opened his eyes. Don't you have high standards? Although the fisherman girls were at the peak of their youth, they were still only average, indeed nowhere close to the kind of targets Pei Ming usually hunted for. However, after having embraced women, his face was glowing, and he rubbed his chin laughing. Well, after rescuing so many scraggly bearded old fisherman masters, one after the other, any woman looks delectable in comparison. Ha 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 ha! What a bro! Ah! Hearing this, both the Windmaster and Ming Yi didn't want to look at him anymore! Like, Shilian shook his head, actually finding it rather funny. He and Hua Chong went to the side and sat down next to one another. A moment later, he suddenly felt emptiness in his stomach. Everyone else on the ship didn't need to eat. Although the Windmaster was immortal right now, Shilian suspected that Shiwudu must have given him some sort of holy pill, the kind that can fill his stomach for a few days. So even now, the Windmaster didn't show any sign of hunger. This ship wasn't one built in the mortal realm, so it certainly wouldn't have any rations stowed. Shilian was about to get up and go catch a couple fish in the sea when next to him, Hua Chong passed over something. Shilian looked down, and it was a snow-white and soft steam bun. He sat back and whispered, "Thank you so long." Hua Chong whispered back, "Take this for now, Gege. It'll get better soon." The steam bun was still split in half, and the two sat together munching slowly. Ah, it's a date! Again! On the other end of the ship, Pei Ming heard them whispering to each other, and he slicked his hair up again. "Have you two made some discoveries? Why don't you leave your little world and tell the rest of us?" Oh my god. Shilian was about to say something to put him off when suddenly he frowned. "Don't you all think there's something off?" Ming Yi frowned too. "Yes." Shilian rose to his feet. "This ship seems to be growing slower. Is it running out of power? How can that be? The amount of spiritual power stored up in the ship should be enough to allow it to run 2 more days at sea." "But I think that this ship suddenly got heavier." He abruptly stopped mid-sentence. Shiwudu and the others gathered to the side of the ship. "What is it?" There was no need to ask. It was easy just by looking. Despite the darkened sky, it was still faintly visible that the draft of the ship's hull was suddenly becoming abnormal, much higher than usual, and the water line was still climbing. "Is the bottom of the ship leaking? Did we hit a shoal? Is there something in the waters that's chiseled a hole? That's impossible. How would we not notice if we hit shoals? The ship isn't a typical ship either. Nothing normal should be able to chisel through unless... Unless what? Oh no. What? Oh no! When ships enter the lair of demons, they shall sink. We've drifted to the Blackwater demon lair. Ah! Ah! We're in the Blackwater! Oh, snap! Oh my god! Ships in the lair of demons shall sink. Ooh, Shilian asked, "One of the 4 supremes, the ship sinking Blackwater?" 4 calamities, not 4 supremes. Oh, well, yes. Shilian remembered that he'd forgotten about Qirong and apologized. Ah, yes, sorry, my mistake. There's no way that the Night Touring Green Lantern could be on the same level as the other 3. As someone who had crammed the scrolls, Shilian roughly knew a bit about this ship-sinking Blackwater. Oh, do you? And you're just now choosing to tell us. According to legends, this was a powerful water ghoul who lurked in the outer seas. Just like the Crimson Rainsop Flower, he slaughtered his way out of Mount Tonglu. Although he tended to keep a low profile, that could only be said for the mortal and heavenly realms. Roughly counting, he had swallowed at least 500 ghosts across the land, and among them, around 400 were high-level water ghouls. The Blackwater Demon Lair was his resting domain. So he has been eating ghosts. They've just been... He's like a pescatarian. just they all are the same kind. Ghost City was under Hua Chong's jurisdiction. When one stepped foot into his domain, his word was law. Once within the boundaries, the world is lawless. It was just so here as well. There was a saying that it was even more widespread in the underworld. Crimson rules the land, black masters the waters. Ooh, I love that! Yes! Crimson obviously referred to Hua Chong, therefore black was none other than the black water demon Jean. Jean! Another Jean! There's like 3 Jeans in this. Right? There's Scholar He, who is a Jean. There's the Black Water Demon Jean. There's Qing Jean. Pei Ming spoke. "The Watermaster Jean, you're really unlucky this time. Demon Jean isn't anything like the Green Ghost, even though he's not the type to cause trouble. Luckily, we haven't strayed too far. We should steer back before we're discovered." Oh! So is that suggesting one of the calamities the Watermaster faced was in fact Qirong? That's hilarious. Oh, the others stared at him. "Well, why don't we change course then? Aren't you the one in charge of the ship?" "It didn't already change course? The ship should do it automatically. It shouldn't require manual labor." But the rudder didn't budge at all. With no other options, Pei Ming resorted to steering it himself. When his hand landed on the rudder, he furrowed his brows. "It won't move?" It's impossible that Pei Ming lacks strength. Shilian, who was fairly confident in his own strength, wasn't able to move it either. After examining the situation at hand, Ming Yi announced, "It might have been caught by something. I'll go down and take a look." "Oh, I'll go with you, Ming Zhang." "Oh, come back here. Don't go running around." His brother was still in the middle of passing his trial and shouldn't be distracted or emotionally agitated. The Windmaster wouldn't dare risk it and obediently came back. leaving Ming Yi to investigate under the deck by himself. Shilian wanted to help too, but he knew when it came to building and repairs, he wasn't as capable as the Earthmaster. Even if he went, he wouldn't be able to be much help anyway. As he was gazing into the pitch-black sea that surrounded them, Shilian suddenly remembered something. He asked, "Are there any fishermen that ended up in this part of the sea?" Hua Chong, who had partnered up with Shilian in the search and rescue, was the first one to discover those stranded fishermen. He did a quick survey around and said, "It's unlikely. Blackwater Demon Lair is in the South Sea. They wouldn't drift this far. Besides, the area here has a barrier. Not just anyone can enter this place. Even if they did, there wouldn't be any hope for a rescue. There's nothing that wouldn't sink once it's drifted here." Well, if we're in the South, then that is like the furthest from Pei Ming, right? So Pei Ming's not going to be as strong, right? Because we're far out of his jurisdiction. The South Sea, they hadn't realized they drifted this far. Shilian tested his spiritual communication ray, and the connection was indeed down. Even though the connection before was spotty, it was still usable. Now it was just complete dead silence. Although the sea looked peaceful, who knew what sort of danger lurked beneath, waiting for the chance to ambush them? The sky was turning darker, and Shilian felt uneasy. Well, since there's no stranded fishermen in these parts, if Lord Earthmaster is not able to repair the ship, we might as well abandon the ship and seek land first. When the Watermaster returns to East Sea for his trial, we can continue to search and rescue there as well. Might as well, Pei Ming agreed as he opened the cabin door. Who knew that after the door was pulled open, he'd be met with the interior of an empty cabin instead of the scenery on land? His expression changed immediately. The distance shortening array lost its power. Hua Chong laughed. Isn't that normal? If you can't even use a spiritual communication array, how would the distance shortening array be any better? Pei Ming looked over and asked, "This little buddy here seems quite calm for a youngster and doesn't seem worried at all." Shilian interrupted. Well, the ship has already drifted into ghost territory and is sinking as we speak. We can't leave here if we wanted to. Let's solve the problem here at hand first. The Windmaster called out to the person under the deck. "Ming Zhang, how's the situation looking down there? Can you fix it?" "Nothing's broken. The ship isn't caught in anything either. It's something else that's caused the ship to lose power. This is Demon Jean's playground now." As he was speaking, the ship dipped again. Upon a glance, Shilian saw that water had already swallowed up half the ship. If this was a normal boat, it would have given way by now. However, since this was crafted by the gods, it was still resisting sinking and fighting to stay afloat. "There must be exceptions. It's impossible that everything would sink here. There must be something that wouldn't sink." "There is," Hua Chong said. The attention fell on him instantly. With his arms folded, he lazily said, "There's one type of wood that's able to float across the Blackwater Demon Lair without sinking. Sandalwood, agar wood, elm, coffin wood." Coffin wood? And there's no one else who's returned alive after they've stumbled into the Blackwater Demon Lair except for one person. That person was traveling home with his deceased love's corpse. When the boat sank, he drifted back to land on top of the coffin. "This little buddy sure knows a lot!" Pei Ming raised a brow. Hua Chong mirrored his expression and replied, "It's not much. You just know too little, that's all." So wait, the coffin person, Hua Chong! Even though Shiwudu didn't dare move from his seated meditation pose, he turned his attention to Hua Chong and narrowed his eyes. "Pei Zhang, I wanted to ask this earlier. Just who is this?" Pei Ming explained, "I'm afraid you have to ask His Highness for that. After all, it's someone from his palace." Oh! Ah! The Windmaster interrupted. All right. It doesn't matter how much or how little he knows. Now that the spells have lost their power, where does one go to get a coffin around here? "No need. It's simple," Pei Ming answered. "Gege and I will build one for you right now and show you what it means to take these things into your own hands and be rich in food and dress." "It won't work," Hua Chong pointed out. "It has to be a coffin that has carried a corpse." They couldn't possibly build a coffin, then off a person in the group and toss them in there. Oh. In the midst of the conversation, the boat dipped again. The slightly tilted deck that they were standing on was almost at the same level as the water surface. Shiwudu, who was sitting dignified in his meditation pose, almost tipped over. "I give up. Let me handle this," he said coldly. He took out a fan and tapped it lightly against his forehead before fanning it out, revealing the water character on the front and a waved pictogram made up of 3 curving lines in the back. He lifted his arm and called out, "Water, come forth!" Instantly, Shilian felt the ship being lifted up. The deck under him rose several inches above the water, bringing back a sense of safety. "The Watermaster fan can even control the water in the Blackwater demon lair?" he asked in surprise. "Not the water here," Huachong corrected. He channeled the water from the outside. It seems that they just crossed the boundary into the Blackwater demon lair and had ventured too far into it. Shiwudu was able to draw water from the seas nearby to lift up the ship from underneath. Pei Ming praised, "Beautifully done, bro! Beautifully done, Watermaster Zhang. Now that the rudder is useless, the boat can't turn back. You should hurry and use the water to pull the ship back." Before Shiwudu could reply, the ship dipped once again. The demon lair water refused to back down and clashed with the current from the outer seas. This time the dip was stronger, causing the deck to tilt even more. Losing balance, the crew slid to the port side of the ship. Although Shiwudu was born with a delicate and handsome face, his personality was extremely stubborn, refusing to back down. When he felt that something was going up against him, a flash of anger appeared on his face. He snapped his fan shut and he opened it again. The three-wave lines grew bigger. The current in the ocean doubled in force, and the ship was yanked up once again. With one force commanding the boat to sink and another forcing it to rise. The back and forth made it seem like a giant tug-of-war game. The erratic movements of the ship, along with the constant lifts and drops, caused the seawater around them to splash wildly and gush in and out. If it was anyone else on the ship, they'd be scared witless by now. Shilian grasped the ledge with one hand and tightly held on to Huachong with the other. "Oh! What's happening? The ship's turning!" True to his words, the ship already started spinning towards a certain direction. The faster it spun, the lower it sank. It was then that Shilian realized the ship had fallen into a giant whirlpool and was being sucked into the eye. "Everyone be careful, the two forces of water are battling." It was obvious that Shiwudu was not on his home turf. The water he summoned from the outer seas was powerful, but once it crossed the border, the strength was suppressed significantly. To go against the demon lair current, it was at a great disadvantage. As expected, as soon as the words left Shilian's mouth, the ship fell into the eye of the whirlpool. In the last second, Shilian tossed out Feng Shin. He pulled in Huachong, and the two stepped onto the sword and flew up. Oh, look at he's trying. Huachong is very capable of saving himself at this point, but he's just letting Shilian do it, right? At first, he was worried Feng Shin wouldn't have the strength to fly, but the moment they left the deck, he let out a sigh of relief. Although shaky, it was still able to fly. I can't imagine that Huachong has no hand in that. Looking down from above, the entire area was painted in a terrifying black. It was easy to see the collision before the two different colored currents. Their fierce battle was what formed the entire enormous whirlpool. As the eye swallowed the ship whole, the two currents of the water separated. However, the battle was far from over. Like two venomous vipers, they continued to snap at each other. Each collision was followed by a mountain of angry waves. Shilian looked around and called, "Lord Windmaster, Lord Earthmaster, General Pei." The Windmaster's voice came from 10 feet behind him. "Your Highness, we're here." "Did you also jump on your Imperial sword?" Shilian turned around, and the scene that unfolded before him rendered him speechless. Ming was standing on top of the handle of a shovel, and Qingshong was sitting on the head of the shovel, waving at him. Ah! Ming's like, "When in doubt." Oh! This wasn't an Imperial sword, it was an Imperial shovel. This sort of imagery was undoubtedly hard on the eyes. On the other side, Pei Ming's voice sounded, "What about the Watermaster Zhang?" Seeing that Pei Ming was on his sword alone and there was no sign of the Watermaster, the Windmaster called out, "Gay! Gay!" Shilian reassured, "No need to panic, he's the Watermaster. It'll be hard for him to sink." But when he recalled the power of that whirlpool, he turned to Huachong. "San Long, hold on tight to my waist, don't fall." Huachong put on an obedient act and replied, "Okay, but Gege, there's something I have to tell you." "What is it?" "You can't fly in the Blackwater demon lair. It'll attract things." Not a second after, a sharp cry pierced through the air. A giant white creature broke through the water's surface, heading straight for Pei Ming. Pei Ming was a master swordsman. The moment when he sensed killing intent, his hand reached for his sword, only to realize that the said sword was under his feet. Luckily, his reaction was quick. With a leap, he grabbed his sword midair and sliced the incoming creature in half. Before gravity could take control, he flipped back onto the sword, not a single hair out of place. As if it was nothing, he steadily flew and asked in total calmness, What was that thing? The sliced corpse of the creature was only slightly visible from the water's surface. Shilian squinted his eyes to get a better look. A fish? Oh, it was definitely a fish, but not an average fish. It was a fish bone that was as wide as a fish tank and many feet in length. This fish had neither scales nor flesh, but only stark white bones that connected to a sharp teeth-filled mouth. Whether it was poisonous or not, if bitten, it would surely be painful as hell. Pei Ming flew higher and warned, "You all be careful, there's probably more of them. They're just like giant fish bones." As expected, when he mentioned one, a second one shot out from below. This time it headed straight for Ming Yi and Shi and the Windmaster. Unfortunately, the Earthmaster was not a martial god, and his fighting power wasn't as strong. The Windmaster was now just a god in a mortal's body. On top of all this, Ming Yi was rather rusty with his imperial shovel. Even though the two didn't get bitten, they were still knocked off balance and into the sea. As if they were falling in midair, the Windmaster cried out in despair, "Mingzhang, I hope you'll remember to practice using your treasure more often after today." Ming Yi retorted, "Get lost." Pei Ming sighed and rushed over to rescue the two. Seeing that Pei Ming went forward to lend a hand, Shilian knew that he would be able to handle it alone. It's really not Earthmaster's fault, he thought to himself. With a shovel like that as a treasured weapon, no one with any shame would dare take it out. Just then, a bone-chilling breeze went through him. Shilian gathered his thoughts and said softly, "Sanlong, hang on tight. Watch, there's something coming our way." Okay. The hands wrapped around his waist tightened. Oh my God. Huachong is just living this up, right? Not long after, 4 water walls shot up from below and surrounded them. 4 giant bonefish rose from the sea. The 4 gigantic bone-white corpses were more like dragons than fish. The combination of hills of dorsal fin bones, dangerously sharp horns, and long snake-like bodies protruding 4 claws circled around Shilian and Huachong, leaving no room for escape. As for flying upwards, this was as high as function could go. If they were to go down, they'd only come face to face with a dead, silent ocean. All right, who first? After a moment of consideration, he clasped his hands together. Together it is. Soon after, the bone dragon on the east side let out a howl and rushed forward. Shilian raised his hand and pointed in its direction. Instantly, the bone dragon froze. For such an enormous monster to be detained by one sword, one person, and one finger, and not be able to even fly an inch forward. It angrily thrashed around its tail and claws, creating walls of waves. The other 3 lunged forward as well. Shilian turned his pointing finger into a claw. He grabbed the bone dragon's horn and whipped it in a circle as if it was a weapon. A loud whoosh tore through the sky. The 3 incoming dragons were instantly skewered by the one that Shilian had threw out, before dropping down at the ocean as scattered pieces of bones. I'm sure that Huachong was the one that actually did all that, but he's letting Shilian take the credit. Shilian dusted his hands off and let a breath. "Sanlong, are you okay?" "With crescent eyes, yeah," Huachong smiled. "Under Gege's protection, how can anything happen to me?" Hearing him respond like that made Shilian feel rather awkward and embarrassed. Now that he thought about it, dealing with these sort of things was an easy task for Huachong. How could there be any problems? It made Shilian's question seem as if he was intentionally asking for praise, though in all honesty, he asked for the sake of asking. Lost in his thoughts, the sword suddenly sank, and before Shilian could even register what had happened, they were already rapidly falling, plunging into the icy cold water. Oh! It wasn't because they were being grabbed by something. It was simply due to the fact that Feng Xin was too old. After holding out for so long, it needed to rest. The bone-chilling seawater gushed in from all directions. After accidentally swallowing 2 gulps of water, Shilian closed his mouth and swam upwards. However, the Blackwater demon layer water was as wicked as they described. Shilian considered himself to be a fairly good swimmer, yet in these waters, his body felt like an iron block. No matter what he did, it refused to float. He opened his eyes, but the water was just as muddy. He wasn't able to locate Huachong anywhere. He felt around with his hands. Other than Feng Xin, he wasn't able to grab a hold of anything else, and he could start to feel panic rise from inside of him. However, the more anxious he was, the more sluggish his movements were, and the faster he sank. Luckily, not long after, it was as if someone had parted the fog. Shilian felt a ray of light shining down on him. He felt someone grab his hand and waist and quickly lift him up to the surface. Once out of water, Shilian gasped for breath, and when he wiped the water from his face, he saw his savior was none other than Hua Chong. It was quite strange, as according to the common saying, the dead sink. Hua Chong, who was technically a corpse, should have sunk faster than Shi Lian. Yet he was floating lightly and effortlessly on the water surface. He bent his head down and looked at Shi Lian. "Are you all right?" Shi Lian nodded. The familiarity of this scene suddenly brought memories of a similar situation that had happened not so long ago. Instantly, from the fetus spirit, instantly he felt his face heat up. With one hand wrapped around Shi Lian, Hua Chong used his spare hand to stir and leisurely glide through the water. "Gege, hold on to me. You'll sink if you let go." At a loss for words, Shi Lian blankly nodded several times. Not far from them, there was a stir of movements in the water, and a row of horn-like bones rose to the surface. Like a school of sharks, it swam towards them with incredible speed. The 4 bone dragons that were badly beaten by Shi Lian were back for revenge. They circled the two with the starving gazes of predators, and finally, after they couldn't hold themselves back any longer, they dove in viciously. Grasping Feng Shen tightly in his hand, Shi Lian waited for the moment to strike. Above him, Hua Chong clicked his tongue in annoyance. The bone dragons were almost within an arm's reach from tearing them apart, but upon hearing the sound, their killing intent instantly vanished. The teeth-filled mouth that was about to snap Shi Lian's throat instead came forth and nudged at Feng Shen as if giving it a few pecks. "What?" Shi Lian was confused. While he was still floating there dumbfoundedly, the 4 creatures scampered away with tails between their legs. Shi Lian was speechless, but Hua Chong had already continued swimming. "Gege, now you know. If you're going to get any pets in the future, definitely don't consider those ones. They're useless trash." "What? Pets? No, I wasn't considering anything." So they're the pets of the water master. Suddenly, a bone dragon broke through the water surface and shot straight up into the sky. Shi Lian looked up and saw that Shi Wudu sat on top of the creature's head. His hands clasped together to form an aggressive attack hand seal. His face was tense as if it was vigorously fighting against some force. The once peaceful and calm ocean was now tossing and turning. Not seeing any signs of the wind god or the others, Shi Lian called out, "Lord Windmaster, Lord Earthmaster, General Pei, where are you?" He scanned around across the surroundings under the dim moonlight. Instead of finding his comrades, he found himself being swallowed up by a huge shadow. He spun around and his eyes widened at the sight of the ginormous wave that was as tall as the sky, falling his way. In the next second, he fell into complete darkness. After being carried by the ebb and flow of the ocean for a long time, Shi Lian finally opened his eyes. Although he didn't sit up, he could feel from beneath him that he had arrived on land. As he laid there, regaining his strength, he lifted up an arm and saw that his hand had become pruny from the prolonged soak in the water. He felt something under his waist, and when he tilted his head to take a look, he realized the object was Hua Chong's arm. Judging from the position to the figure lying next to him, it seemed that Hua Chong had never once let go of him. Though he had already woken up, Hua Chong had not. His eyes were still shut. Shi Lian sat up and gently nudged him. "Sanlong, Sanlong!" Hua Chong didn't respond. Shi Lian nudged him again while scanning the surroundings. They were on land, but aside from the vast amount of trees that had crowded together to form an endless forest, there were no signs of docks or people at all. Rather than mainland, it was more of an isolated island. Above all, the most surprising thing was that it was already daylight. They must have floated for an entire night. Where could they have ended up? After repeated poking, Hua Chong was still deep asleep and hadn't moved an inch. Ghosts couldn't drown. At least that's what Shi Lian had thought. However, just because Hua Chong couldn't drown, it didn't mean that other things in the ocean, such as poisonous bonefish, couldn't have attacked him. Thus, Shi Lian patted Hua Chong down, and starting from his chest to his arms and all over his legs to make sure there weren't any wounds. Yet other than discovering Hua Chong had a fine body, oh my god! There were no other finds! Shi Lian was at his wit's end and started to worry. "Sanlong, don't joke around." No response. In a moment of panic, Shi Lian actually put his head against Hua Chong's chest in search of a heartbeat. Then he immediately realized, how could ghosts have heartbeats? However, to his surprise, he actually heard it. Shi Lian was stunned. A thought quickly came to him. Logically, in his true form, Huashang shouldn't be able to drown, but now he had become a 17 or 18-year-old human. Did the same rules apply? Although he felt Huachang wasn't the kind to overlook these sort of flaws, there wasn't really an explanation. There was really no explanation. No matter what, he wasn't able to wake him. After a long internal debate, Shilian slowly reached out with his hands and placed them gently around Huachang's face. The features on his face were beyond stunning. Cupping Huachang's face like this and thinking about what he was about to do next made it extremely difficult for Shilian to calm his poor heart. Sitting in this tangled position, making sure no one was around, he looked at Huachang again, no signs of waking. This was it. He prepared himself and gritted his teeth. He managed to squeeze out, in barely more than a whisper, "I apologize in advance." His voice was practically shaking when he said it. He clasped his hands together to make a silent prayer before bending down with closed eyes and pressed his lips against Huachang's. At the same time, Huachang suddenly snapped open his eyes. Oh my God, no! 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 Oh, you son of a bitch! No! The tease and the cliffhanger strikes again. Of course we're gonna parallel. As soon as water was involved, it was like we should have known, we should have seen it coming, that as soon as we got into the method of swimming in the water, it was gonna lead to a parallel to Volume 3, where Huachang kissed Shilian to save Shilian, and now the tables have turned, and Shilian is gonna kiss Huachang to save him. But yeah, so apparently maybe this is what it's referring to, and these blue ribbons of curtain are the water. And we're supposed to, whereas the last volume, Volume 3, was a very literal interpretation of the cover, this maybe is a more figurative, although maybe not, because in this one, Huachang is leaning over Shilian and kissing him. Whereas in the scene as we're ending chapter 119, Shilian is leaning over Huachang and kissing him. So maybe we had Huachang initiating a kiss in Volume 3, Shilian is initiating a kiss in the end of this chapter, and maybe this scene here is the mutual come together in this volume. Maybe there's a mutual kiss by the end of it, but I don't know. Shilian had to pray before doing CPR, so... We're at Shilian is praying like, sorry bro, I gotta save you, hope this is okay, when meanwhile Huachang is like, this is more than okay. Or is it, right? But man, these chapters were pretty epic. I was not gonna lie, these chapters were epic. I was living for this. I'm like, dang, why do we have to wait 20 years before this is animated? I'm like, this is gonna be, if they ever get around to animating the contents of this, it is hopefully going to be badass, because I love the idea of the trial, the heavenly trial, and the swirling waters and everything getting crazy and whatnot. Like, how fitting, how interesting. Although there's the Blackwater is so fascinating so far because of how reclusive they are. Like, their lair has the power to sink ships, and there's all these, like, the pet bonefish. We'll talk about the pet dragon bonefish, where he has pets like Flotsam and Jetsam. Those are his little pets. And Huachang's like, get out of here, shoo! And he's like, if you're gonna have a dog, Shilian, make sure it's a good dog. I'm kind of fascinated, right? And the Blackwater seems to be polar opposite of Huachang, whereas Huachang is showy and like kind of like flashy and showy and has like the butterflies and the crimson rain. And it's this big theatrical thing. The Blackwater seems like very reserved and kind of like so subtle and gloomy and weird that it's just kind of, and then Bai Wusheng is its own monster. Like, Bai Wusheng's just nope. But the Blackwater seems like so reclusive and introverted, which is interesting. And then Qi Rong, it's like you have a compass, right? And you have Hua Chong and the Blackwater on polar opposites of the compass, where you have big, flashy, showy thing and very reclusive, right? Hua Chong is extroverted and Blackwater's introverted. And then you have on the other side of the compass, you have Qirong that's just this garbage trash king and is just repulsive. And then you have Bai Wusheng that is freaking terrifying. So it's so interesting, but there was actually a lot going on in these chapters, and I was so frustrated by how easily it was just like Pei Ming shows up and everybody just gives up. It just like everybody gives up when Pei Ming comes around and swings his sword everywhere. And I was getting so frustrated that the Windmaster just went along with Pei Ming so easily after all this trouble that Ming Yi and Shi Lian went to rescue them. But it's their brother. It's family, y'all, and they just can't leave family like that. And we'll talk about it, but I'm like, ugh. And just kind of what this means, right? Because there's little things set up in these chapters, kind of what they mean. We do get one image out of these chapters, which is sadly, I wish we'd got an image of a kiss. Maybe next set of chapters we'll get that. But we do get one image, which is actually a very nice image of a buff oxen man that I'm assuming is... This is the thing. They don't come outright and say it's the Rain Master. I think it's the Rain Master, but they call him the Black Ox. So I'm like, is that the Rain Master or not? I'm assuming it is. Don't tell me. We'll find out, I'm sure. But I'm making the assumption that this is the Rain Master. Now, whether it is or not, we will find out for sure later, I'm certain. Because I don't think this is the last we've seen of the Rain Master. We didn't even see Banyu. So maybe it's not the Rain Master. Maybe this is just the Rain Master's right-hand man, right-hand ox. But I just love how buff he is. And Pei Ming's over here like, I don't like men, so... That's kind of how it is. He's like, my sword doesn't swing this way, sir. But yeah, I love that. So I'm kind of torn. One part of me thinks that this is not the Rain Master, and the Rain Master's over Banyu somewhere, avoiding all this drama because they seem like the ultimate recluse. And the other part of me thinks this is the Rain Master, and they're like, get out, please. Please leave, get out, sir, now. Like one of those things, kind of like Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka. But yeah, I just love that, again, in the tradition of Pei Ming being the pincushion of this series, the farmers are like, you're trampling our crops. And he's like, this looks like a weed. And they're like, what do you know? I love that Shi Lian also realizes that they're just making fun of Pei Ming and just enjoying this moment of just getting to like give him all kinds of hell. Like that's absolutely hilarious. I'm like, okay, fair enough, right? That's really, really good. And so, but man, Pei Ming is such a gaslighter, such a manipulator, right? Because the moment even when he's telling the truth, I'm like, and it's not, I guess it's not gaslighting, I guess it's not lying, but the way that he phrases it is so manipulative. It's so frustrating because he's like, hurry, your brother is going to be, your brother's going to be like fail his trial if you don't come rescue him. I'm like, like I hate it, right? And so we establish a few things. I want to make note of a few things. Kind of some lore. We're going to touch base on some lore in this. And so the trials, apparently, get more dangerous as they go. I find that rather interesting because we have the trials getting more dangerous throughout the series. So the Water Master's on his third, 3 times a charm, and this one's much stronger than the other 2. But what's kind of interesting is that you have Shi Lian, who has had 3 ascensions, and then you have the Water Master, who's on his 3rd trial. And oddly enough, the ascensions for Shi Lian, I don't think they've gotten harder each time. It's an interesting kind of juxtaposition between ascensions and trials. It's different. And they make note that the Windmaster's trial was actually not that hard. And it's like, imagine that. The Windmaster's trial wasn't that difficult when they ascended. It's just showing it has been further fabricated, right? And it's so sad when the Windmaster tries to communicate with the spiritual ray and it doesn't work. They can't communicate and they're like, ugh. And they're just kind of the Windmaster's so deflated through these chapters, and it's so hard to see and hard to read because you're used to the Windmaster being so charismatic and like bubbly and like, let's go, best friends. And now he's so doom and gloom, and it's so sad because it's like you want the Windmaster to be back to their old self again. But man, Pei Ming being like, I knew you'd come here. I love Ming Yi though. Ming Yi in these chapters where they stand out in front of the Windmaster being like, no, he's not going with you. The Ming Yi warms my heart, and there's so many moments in these chapters, not only of Shilian and Hua Chang getting handsy, but also Ming Yi and Windmaster, like Ming Yi staying by Windmaster's side and like propping him up and holding him up this whole time. What a friend. What a ship. I'm like, that ship will not sink for me, and neither will Shilian and Hua Chang, no matter what the water demon does. I love it. And so, yeah, so this big battle is happening. Everybody's freaking out in the heavenly realm. There's all of these, like, fishermen getting involved. It's this big whirlpool, and the water master is distracted because all he can do is worry about his brother being missing. And so Pei Ming's trying to be a good bro. And I get frustrated because as manipulative as Pei Ming is in this moment where he's like, this is all your fault. If you hadn't left, he does gaslight a little bit. I'm going to go back. He does gaslight a little bit because on the one hand, I can't get mad at Pei Ming because he's trying to help his bro out the best he can. And he knows this is going to be better for his brother and the fishermen. Although they seem not as concerned as Shilian about the fishermen. Shilian's like, but the common people. Again, the common people. Shilian's worried about the fishermen, and Pei Ming's just worried about the water master, which is telling, but we already kind of know that. But Pei Ming, even though I can't get mad at him because he is trying to help his best friend and respect, he still is like, well, this is all your fault, Windmaster, for making your brother worry so much. I'm like, this is kind of the water master's fault to begin with. This is his fault to begin with for not being honest with his brother and for trying to force feed him sedatives and keep him in his house locked up. Like, this is not entirely the Windmaster's fault. Don't pin this all on him. And why didn't you explain things back when they were in the tunnel? Back before they met up with Xingzhang, why didn't you say the whole thing about the trial then? Why didn't you not wait until they had already escaped out of the heavenly realm? So it's like, that's cool that you're trying to protect your bro, but it's not totally the Windmaster's fault. Don't gaslight him into thinking that it's all his problem that the Water Master's suffering, because the Windmaster has been trying to protect his brother this whole time. The Windmaster has been trying to do everything for Shi Wudu. Like, the Windmaster has come to grips with the reality that his ascension was fabricated, his brothers lied to him, and that his brother has been trying to, like, make him something he's not. But throughout all of this process, the Windmaster has made sure that the secrets about his brother has been kept, told Shilian and Ming Yi not to come, to like let him go, and that his brothers, he's basically said, I know this is messed up and this has horrible ramifications for all of the heavenly realm and everything in existence, but I love my brother. I'm going to support him no matter what. And so for Pei Ming just to kind of say, oh, this is all your fault, I'm like, the Windmaster's done so much to try to help the Water Master. I mean, can you blame him for not wanting to get out of a bad situation, though? Especially when it's Ming Yi and Shilian helping you out? It's just, I'm not mad at Pei Ming. I'm just frustrated in that moment by him. I'm like, come on. But God! So, okay. Okay, so we need to establish a few things about the situation of relations. Relations at this point. So the Windmaster is all about saving face for, I'm going to just put SW for Shi Wudu, saving face for his brother, right? And Ming Yi is all about protecting the Windmaster, right? And then Hua Chang, what I love about this is that Hua Chang has disguised himself as a young human in his Sanlong getup, only the fisherman edition of Sanlong, that just happens to know everything like he do. But he's not got the ghostly aura to him. Because neither Shi Wudu nor Pei Ming, I'm sure Pei Ming is suspect, right? Pei Ming, whatever Pei Ming's deal is for outing Shi Lian and Hua Chong, it is like borderline obsessive at this point, because he like is, what's your little buddy doing here? Like the whole time he kept using the phrase little buddy, I was like just internally screaming. Pei Ming is bound and determined to prove that Hua Chong and Shi Lian have a thing. He is just bound and determined to. And I'm like, dude, you are obsessing over this. Like, let it go. Let it go, sir. But he's not. But even like Shi Wudu is kind of like, who's your friend? Why is he here? And Windmaster tries to literally blow it over by being like, oh no, it's fine. He's part of Shi Lian's court. It's just like, and Hua Chong is very good at hiding himself. Like he was able to fool any of the objects of Jun Wu. He was able to fool Feng Shen and Mu Qing. So it's like, yeah, it's very convenient that Hua Chong is as strong as he is, because he's able to hide his true identity to anyone but Shi Lian, right? So he takes him back. Pei Ming takes the Windmaster back, and it's like, we went through all this trouble. It's like this whole volume is a whirlpool. This volume is a whirlpool, like the Blackwater Demon Lair, where we're just spinning in circles. We've been spinning in circles throughout this entire story so far. Like we get this one place, then we go back to another place. Then we get to this place, then we go back to another place. Like we take 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. Like we're slowly moving, but it's at a crawl, right? And we're just spinning in circles. Then in this set of chapters, we have the actual representation of a whirlpool, and it's like, that's where we're at. But I was so frustrated when Pei Ming took him back. I'm like, we just got here, and we didn't see Ban Yu, so that's a thing. But I'm surprised that Hua Chong's like, you're not going after him, right? And this is huge. This is huge. He's like, aren't you going after him? And Shi Lian, I'm going to put it under the lore section here, but Shi Lian, he realizes that he maybe should have stayed out. Which, actually, in the long run, it's good that he did get involved, because knowing what we know now that happens of them going to the Blackwater lair, if Shi Lian and Hua Chong weren't there, then things would have been a lot worse. But at the time, I like that Shi Lian is having this self-realization, showing his growth as a character, that he's like, this affair is beyond me. We're going to let them solve this themselves. Which is huge, because Shi Lian in Volume 2 would have been like, we have to get involved. I have to keep chasing after him. I have to keep saving him. I have to keep trying. And for the first time we've seen in the story, he's like, let's just let it go. Let him solve it out. And maybe there's been other times in Volume 1 that it was happening, but this is like the first time post Volume 3 that we're really seeing Shi Lian be like, okay, I'm going to take a step back and let them figure it out. And lo and behold, they need his help in the end. Isn't that funny? But what's interesting here is that we are faced with Shi Wudu's big no-no about the ascension of the Windmaster. And Shi Lian says he is going to trust the heavenly realm until he can't. That's essentially what he's saying. He's like, okay, he's like, you know what? He's like, me in the past, I would have done like in Volume 3, and I would have made my way back to the Goshi, made my way back to Jun Wu, told what the situation was, and be like, demanded justice. And he's like, I've done that, and nothing happened. Things just got worse. So he's like, you know what? The Windmaster has asked this entire time for them not to get involved. He's like, the Windmaster has asked myself and Ming Yi to leave him and his brother alone, and to let his brother not be traumatized by this right now, because he's got this calamity to deal with. And so Shi Lian's like, I don't want to hurt my friendship with the Windmaster. Like, I want to respect the Windmaster's wishes. I respect their friendship. I don't want to turn my back on the Windmaster after they have sacrificed everything to get to this point. So I like that Shi Lian says, I'm going to sit back and watch them take care of it themselves, and maybe have faith that the right thing will happen. But that line when he says, however, if what they should end up doing was untoward, he's like, I'm going to let them work this out. But if what they decide on is going to hurt my friend, then I'm going to speak up, and then we're going to have issues. And I'm like, I kind of like this new Shilian that's decided he's going to sit back until he can't sit back and just be like, okay, we're going to just let this ride out until if things go bad, then I'm going to step in. And I'm like, I like that. I like Shilian is letting it like be on his terms and also like let people deal with the disaster themselves. And he just comes in if it's needed. I love that. And I'm also kind of excited because I think they are going to do something untoward. That's what I think is going to happen. Like, just like how he tried to sit this out and let them resolve it themselves, they couldn't do it. So they had to get Shilian's help. And so I think that just like this situation in these chapters, when it comes down to it and the aftermath of this whole deal is settled, I think Shilian is going to have to step in because I think they are going to do something untoward. I think they're going to try to dust this all under the rug and act like nothing bad happened. And Shilian's like, now wait a minute. Because yeah, here's the deal. Shilian points out, he's like, by all accounts, the person who should pay is the water master. The water master, I know this poor marker, this is probably its last go round. The water master is the one that is at fault. The water master is at fault. That is exactly right. And I'm going to put this in green to emphasize it. This is the water master's fault. They could not, and not that you can't understand where the water master is coming from. Shilian recognizes that. He's like, I get why the water master did what they did. I understand that they did it to save their brother. Totally get it. But Shilian says, I don't agree on the method that they did it with. He's like, I get why the water master wanted to save his brother, but he did it by sacrificing someone else's life. And that was not fair. You cannot do that. You can't take one person's life away to save someone else's when the fates have already decided. He's like, you just can't do that. Like, it's understandable why you'd want to, but you just can't. That's not how the world should work. And so Shilian's kind of like, if anybody needs to pay, it's the water master. They should own up to what they did and accept punishment. But as the story says, it's like the water master is proud and domineering and arrogant, and they're not going to step up and confess. They're like, no, he's been on this high position for so many years. He's been on the high horse. Why would he come down? But he should. And so Shilian's just like, okay, I'll sit back. I'll see what happens. I'll let him try to make the honest decision. But if he doesn't, then I may have to step in. And it's like, I'm just waiting for it to happen. But like Molly MIGH was saying in another comment from a few weeks back, they were like, yeah, MXTX has this thing where they start one issue and one mystery, and then they add in another mystery, and you're like, wait, what about the first one? So I feel like this whole issue with the Water Master and this big no-no that we've done that the Heavenly Realm could be shaken by is going to get pushed to the side for now. I told Molly MIGH in the comments, I'm like, MXTX is like that one fanfic writer that starts a really good fanfic, and then they're like, oh, I have this new idea. And so they kind of just leave it hanging there and they start another one and then another one. And so you've got like 20 fictions up in the air that aren't finished that you're like, are we going to finish one of these? I feel like that's MXTX. They've started all these threads and all these side plots and they just haven't finished any of them yet. We're just sitting here going, right. But yeah. So in any case, they talk about them going to the EC. So what we establish, right, is that if we are establishing anything, it is that if we look at our compass up here, Pei Ming is strongest in the north, right. And then we are over here to the east is where Shi Wudu and them are supposed to be. And then down here, we end up with the Blackwater. So our crew kind of started out in this area and sort of somehow ended up down here. Yee. Which is not good. And us being in the south area, that is where Pei Ming is weaker. So he's not going to be as effective, right? The one outlier in all this, and I get why Hua Chong went along with them, because Hua Chong's like, y'all gonna need my help. And Hua Chong is just like, there are no areas that Hua Chong is stronger in. He's like, he's a supreme in all areas. Now, the Ghost City is his lair where laws are absolute, but he is strong no matter where he goes, right? So I like that Ling Wen calls him Old Pei. Like she's trying to reach out to these martial gods to see who is there. So Function and Mooching are in confinement. So they are conveniently out of the story right now. They've been put in detention because they destroyed the Heavenly Court. They're not going to be able to go do things. They're dealing with their own thing with the Feet of Spirit out to the side here. We're not going to worry about them right now. Long Chan Chu has not returned. He's still gone on his journey of self-discovery post Qi-Rong. Chan Yishin doesn't answer the communication array and does not want to help. So what do? And Shilian realizes they're like, everybody's forgot about me. So I guess I'll volunteer. And so Ling Wen says, Your Highness, the winds and the waves of the East Sea are raging. Your spiritual powers only work at times. What if? And Shilian says, I fished in all 4 seas, and it's always been storming. He's like, I often drifted out for over half a month at a time, so I'm very used to it. Again, we've been doing real good so far in this volume to not have Shilian be so self-deprecating anymore. It's gotten less and less, right? It's been noticeably less and less since volume 3, which I'm happy about. But this is the one option where he's like, yeah, I've been out at sea for a long time and have starved many times. I'm used to it. And they're like, oh, like, what else have you done? Like, they all kind of are like, you've been to all 4 seas? Like, he has roamed around the world for 800 years. He's been everywhere, which we'll talk back about that, right? So they're like, okay, then let's go. And Shilian's like, all right. And so I like that Shilian turns back to Hua Chong like, hey, San Long, I kind of volunteered to go and help out. I hope that's... And then when he turns around, Hua Chong is already in this refreshing fisherman disguise. Refreshing fisherman. Every time Shilian is describing, I'm getting more Modao Sushi vibes now that every time Shilian describes Hua Chong, it's like praising him. And I'm like, okay. But Shilian's like, oh, good, you're ready to go. And Hua Chong's like hell, I'm leaving you to stay here. And I love that, for some reason, the way they describe the distance shortening arrays in these chapters was probably the most crisp and clear out of all the chapters we've seen them use. Like, it just shows the door opening up and there's the expansive beach. And then when they find the fishermen, they throw them back through the door. And when they go to the door, they land back on shore away from everything. It's, for some reason, MXTX... we've used the distance shortening array a lot in this story so far, but for some reason in these chapters specifically, it was really well written. I loved the visuals with it and the imagery. I don't know why, but the imagery in these chapters was amazing. Like, I could instantly picture all the things happening, and I don't know if that's with the translation too, but the translation, the imagery, the narrative, it was spot on in these chapters. These chapters are probably some of my favorites in terms of like action. Like, it's really good. I love it. It felt epic. It felt like, you know, we've had in the flashbacks battles, and the battles felt very like mortal. Like, it was just like people with swords fighting with swords, right? It felt like something you'd see in like a war movie, right? And we've seen like the mystery detective stories where they're not really full on battles, but they're just kind of like more of a mystery, right? And then we have our food journeys where we just eat and drink and be merry. This is the first real battle that felt like the battle between gods. Like, it felt supernatural. It felt real. It felt like 2 deities clashing. Like, it was epic and sprawling, and it just felt ethereal. And we've not had battles so far in the series that have felt like that to me. Like, this just felt like something that only deities could encounter, right? And that was kind of cool. I liked that a lot. But these like water pillars that are like dragons. I love that the water master, I'll find another marker here. I love that the water master, not the water master, the Blackwater. Good. It's really hard when they both sound the same. The Blackwater has like this dragon motif, right? They have this really cool dragon motif, which I like. I like that there's like all the water pillars are like dragons. The bonefish are like dragons. It's kind of cool. It's very mythological. It's neat. And I love that the bonefish that attack them are just literal. They're just like dry bones off Mario. It's just like just the bones, no flesh, nothing. Just like skeletons fighting them. It's really cool. I like it. And so then the Windmaster's like, oh, I'm sorry for all the trouble. I truly am. And all the Shilian's like, duty calls. How's the ship? I love it. Shilian's so nerdy and it's so cute. And Pei Ming does not recognize Hua Chong. He's like, those unrelated must leave. This Tempest isn't a joke. And Hua Chong just looks like a handsome, intelligent, good-looking little fisherman. And he's like, I'm not anyone unrelated. I'm just following my highness. Yeah, and Shilian saying he's from my palace should have been a red flag. Because how long has Shilian been exiled? What? No. But the Windmaster, who may have, for all we know, figure out who it is, Ming Yi, I'm sure knows who it is, they're like, no, just let them go, let them be, they're fine, let's just hurry up and get this done. Best wingmen, even if unaware, best wingmen. So yeah, I love the idea. And now Pei Ming, the Windmaster, and Ming Yi all have on their minds to go find the Watermaster and make sure everything's all right. But Shi Lian's like, hey, we have a job to do. Weren't we supposed to go find fishermen and save them first? Let's not forget our mission. And that gets them back on track. That's why they were there. But it is so sad to see the Windmaster be like, I want to save these people and I want to get to my brother faster. And if I had my powers, we could do this. If I had my powers as the Windmaster, we could make this ship go so much faster and save him and do all this. And it's so sad because it's like the Windmaster's had a taste of what they have the potential to do. And now it's been revealed to be a sham and a lie. And it's so tragic. I'm like, ugh. I just want to like give him a big old hug, right? And so, yeah, Pei Ming and everybody, I love the idea of Pei Ming opening up the doors and flying the fishermen through to get them to be saved. I love they immediately save like 30 or 40 fishermen. And they managed to they established that like if it had been anybody from the middle court, they would have been like taken out instantly. So the fact that Ming Yi and Pei Ming are supporting and saving the Windmaster is really good. And then obviously it's like Pei Ming and the Watermaster are pretty oblivious because they've established that like people from the middle court couldn't stand up to this Tempest, but this fisherman Hua Chong can. Okay, sure. And then that's when we see the Watermaster, white robes fluttering, a battle seal, like battling these pillars of dragons. And Pei Ming, I like that it's so sad the Windmaster is trying to call out to his brother and his brother can't hear him. And Pei Ming's voice like broadcasts straight to him. And of course, the Watermaster is pissed. He's like, why are you here? Why'd you run away? Why'd you get me flustered in the first place? Like, the Watermaster's frustration is understandable because he's like that big brother that's like, I told you not to run away. Why did you do this? Because he does care about his brother. That's the problem. The Watermaster cares too much about his brother to the point where he's overprotective. He does shady things without, thinking about how his brother would feel about that. And he does treat his brother like a little kid when it's like, your brother's a grown adult. Like, let him live his own life. But you understand why he's like that. So it makes his character more complicated. I'm still not a fan of the Watermaster much at all. I'm just not. I'm just like, he's so arrogant. But I understand why people would connect with him. Especially, I'm an older sibling. I'm the eldest, and I have a younger brother. And I can totally understand his motivations and his feelings, but I'm just like, at some point, your siblings become adults, and you gotta let them be adults and make their own choices, even if you don't agree with them, right? That's the thing. Like, my brother does some things sometimes, and I'm like, that's really dumb. Why would you do that? But I don't tell him that. I'm just like, you're an adult. You'll figure it out. If you need help, I'm here. One of those scenarios, right? And the Watermaster just doesn't seem to be able to get to that point where they can just let him make his own decisions. He still wants to have a hand in everything. And I get it. I do. It's just, it's sad. It makes me sad. But yeah, I love the description in these chapters about how the lightning striking the sea and the raindrops, like when the dragons like crash down and are originally like defeated, like the raindrops pelting down like rocks. Like, I love the description. Like, MXTX really goes all out making this like this big epic sprawling Pirates of the Caribbean, like supernatural feast. And it's really good writing. These chapters were so much fun to read. I really, really liked them. And you can just sense the tension around everything, right? Everything is so tense and you can feel it. And so the Windmaster's like, as long as you pass your trial, it's all that matters. And that's the thing. Like, they just want the Watermaster to pass their trial first. And then they'll deal with all this garbage, like all the garbage about it being like a fabricated ascension, all that. They're like, once we pass the trial, we'll deal with it. Or will we, right? Or will we? And so they established this whole giant thing was just the opening act. That they still got like a full week worth of trials and tribulations for the Water Master to face. And I'm like, how do they know it's 7 days and 7 nights? Is that just the tried and true, like tried and true, like date that it usually takes, I guess, right? But they established that even if it was the first heavenly calamity, it wouldn't be that easy. And now it's the third, so it's especially hard. So, of course, they say we've entered where the Lord Water Master is passing his heavenly calamity, where are the fishermen, and asks Ling Wen for help, but that's when the signal starts to break up, and Shilian's like, what? And they realize that they have drifted too far south where the signal is no longer working. Like, ugh, not good, Cotton, not good. So yeah, they decide that the spiritual communication array has been messed up. They're like, well, we said we knew there was 261 fishermen. That's what Ling Wen said before the communication broke up. So we know how many we have to save. Let's just do what we can and try our best to save them. And just at least do our job we came here to do. And so no one objects because no one wants to be that guy, right? And so they convince the Water Master to go meditate. And at first, the Wind Master's going to stay with Ming Yi. And it's like, but then the Water Master's like, get over here. Like, I feel for Ming Yi too, because Ming Yi has been like MVP. Ming Yi has like been at Wind Master's side, trying to help him, trying to do whatever a BFF can. And it's like when your younger sibling has this really close friend / possible boyfriend, and the older sibling's like, no, you're not good enough for my brother, stay away. I get those vibes with the Water Master. I feel like the Water Master does not think the Earth Master is good enough to be around their brother. And it's like, dude, the Earth Master is the best thing the Wind Master's ever had, outside of you as a supportive brother. So like, don't take that away from your brother. That's like one of the only things he has, right? Because yeah, here's the thing. The Water Master has the 3 tumors. Like, they're all bros. Like, Ling Wen and Pei Ming and the Water Master all hang out, even though they're all cases. But it's like, let Wind Master have his friends, right? You have your friends, Pei Ming and Ling Wen. Let Wind Master have Shilian and Ming Yi, right? That's not so hard. But I felt bad for Ming Yi because Ming Yi, like, wanted to have Wind Master by his side, and the Wind Master wanted to go over there, but Shiwudu was like, no, and just kept him near him instead. So yeah, so I like that they drift out at sea, and Shilian points out the hardships that will happen if they don't rescue these fishermen immediately. Like, they're going to die of starvation, dehydration. And I'm glad that Shilian mentions all of this, because honestly, there's so much supernatural, wondrous things that happen in Heaven Official's Blessing that sometimes it takes away the reality and the stakes of certain things. Like you know that, like, they established that Shiwudu gave his brother a heavenly pill so that he wouldn't be hungry. Okay, that's like a plot convenience so that the Wind Master doesn't need food. And Shilian starts to realize that he's hungry because his spiritual power has been, contained. But in this fantastical story where there's like all of these, like, these deities have such limitless capabilities, you sometimes forget the stakes of the common mortal people. And so I'm glad that we have a paragraph where Shilian's like, no, if we didn't rescue these people, they would die. They would starve. And you kind of forget that in this story. You're like, oh, they'll be fine. The deities have got this covered. They don't need food. And it's nice to get brought back to that reality. Also, oh my God, Pei Ming. Pei Ming! I feel like Shilian. I just find the whole thing funny. I'm like Shilian, where Pei Ming like rescues all these fishermen girls. He like shoves the fishermen back through the distance shortening array, but he keeps the girls around. He's like, hey ladies. He sits there, he holds them in his embrace. He soothes their tears with a gentle voice. He just schmoozes them so much before sending them on his way. And I like that Shiwudu is like, don't you have high standards? Like, again, what an arrogant bastard. And Pei Ming is like, well, when you've, been around these ugly fishermen so long, like any girl is great in comparison. I'm like, just admit you're a man whore and you like any lady that moves and move on. You don't have high standards. You literally sleep with ghosts. I'm like the whole high standards of Pei Ming. No, he will sleep with anyone and anything. Like, let's be real. That's why Shilian doesn't want to become a woman. No. But yeah, it's hilarious. I love that Ming Yi and the Windmaster are so disgusted. They're just like, ugh. They're like, gross. Get out of here. But callbacks. We need to write down here, callbacks. So make on here callbacks in this. So obviously, we have the callback of Shilian from past to present about being involved. We've had that, right? We've had that, okay? But in here, we also have Shilian and Hua Chong and the steamed bun, right? I love how MXTX, again, like a whirlpool, like we go back and we thread back and then we move forward with it, right? So Shilian's like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. And he's like, I'm going to go catch some fish. Like, he doesn't ask, if anybody has any food. He's like, Shilian has gone from being a spoiled prince who expected stuff to be handed to him to being like, I'll go catch my fish myself. Character growth, right? And he goes to catch a couple fish when Hua Chong like, no. Here's the steamed bun. And it's just like, it goes right back to the cart where they first met in the story, officially. And Shilian took the bun in half and was like, here you go, and gave it to him. And now it's Hua Chong's turn to give him back the steamed bun. And whereas Hua Chong was kind of like, okay, Shilian's like, okay. And like, it's that parallel, but it's so wonderful. And here's the thing, Pei Ming is bound and determined to out them, because he's just like, what are you guys whispering about? Like, he slicks his hair back. He's like, what are you whispering about? What's going on? What's up, Pat? What's happening? Like, he's bound and determined to find them out. And Shilian's like, no, we're just sharing a meal. What's up? And Hua Chong, he kind of starts giving them some lore about what's happening when they get to the Blackwater. I love that they've drifted to the Blackwater lair. Shilian says, one of the four supremes, and they're like, four calamities, not four supremes. They're so bound and determined to not make Chi-Rong associated with that. They're like, no. The Night Touring Green Lantern is not on the same level as the others, as we talked about. So, by the three trials, do we get the idea that, I got the idea that Chi-Rong was one of them? I got the impression from what Pei Ming tells him that because he says, Demon Jean isn't anything like the Green Ghost, even though he's not the type to cause trouble. Luckily, we haven't strayed too far. We should steer back before we're discovered. So yeah, so I get the idea that one of the calamities that the Watermasters had to face was Chi-Rong. Imagine that. That I want to know more about. But also, so the Blackwater is the Demon Jean, right? We have 3 Jeans in this volume. We have Scholar He, who also has Jean in his name. And then we have Qing Jean. What the fudge? We have 3 Jeans. So that seems related. So I'm like, okay, so what do we do with that? Is it just coincidence? I mean, we've established that there's a connection here where the fates were swapped, right? Where the fates were swapped. And as a ghost, he ate the Reverend of Empty Words. But I'm like, again, we're going to get into theory time. Is Demon Jean related to the Scholar He? Are they related? I don't know. Is it the same? Are these one and the same? I don't think the Reverend of Empty Words and the Blackwater are the same being, but it's really coincidental that they're called Demon Jean and they have the same name as these two. And we've been establishing this idea of fates reversing and things like that. So it's really weird. It's just really weird. And it's coincidental, and I don't know what to make of it. Maybe Jean is just a common name, like John in English. John's a common name, so maybe it's just a common name. Everybody has Jean in their names. It's just rather coincidental that we've gotten to this point in the story, and there's just 3 Jeans all connected in the same arc. It's just interesting. But anyway, so Pei Ming is saying that the ship should be able to move on its own, but that's when they realize that the ship is literally being sunk. It's literally being sunken by the Blackwater. And I love the idea that Hua Chong gives him, Shilian goes through the history of the Blackwater. It says, according to the legends, this powerful water ghoul. So they're a water ghoul that lurked in the outer seas and slaughtered their way from Mount Tonglu. So the Water Master, I keep wanting to call him the Water Master, the Blackwater and Hua Chong are both calamities that came from Mount Tonglu. They fought their way out from Mount Tonglu and became super, super powerful. Which is kind of interesting because that parallels the Water Master a little bit in a certain way, because you have the Water Master who's faced all of these trials and tribulations and has done underhanded things and has gotten to this point that they've gotten to. We don't know what else they've done. And then you have the Blackwater that's fought their way through all these ghosts, and the Blackwater has also, put down here, has eaten. He's become a pescatarian. He's on a water ghoul diet. Has eaten water ghouls to get stronger. Which again, coincidentally ties him into this whole idea about Scholar Hut eating the Reverend of Empty Words. So I'm like, there seems to be a relationship there. There seems to be something similar there. We just got done in the last couple chapters talking about a ghost that was eating other ghosts, ghost devouring ghosts. And now we have the Blackwater that is also devouring ghosts. So there seems to be a relationship there and a correlation, but I don't know what it is yet. I'm sure MXTX is going to tell us, so please don't spoil me, but just know that Romania Black's head is like murky like the Blackwater with all of these theories. And I'm like, if it's not related, it's a really interesting symbolic parallel, and seems important that we're just bringing up, maybe we're using the Blackwater and Scholar Huh as examples of ghost devouring ghosts, and that's just what MXTX is trying to get across. We shall see. We shall see. So it's interesting, but we establish here that each of them keep control over a certain domain. The Blackwater has his domain, and the Crimson Rain Flower has theirs. So the Ghost City is Hua Chong's domain, and he has this. I love Hua Chong's. Once within the boundaries, the world is lawless. Like that's his creed. He's like, once you're in the Ghost City, there are no rules. Love it. And then the Blackwater says that it's basically the Blackwater saying, once you get into my domain, all ships sink. And so I love the widespread saying in the underworld, crimson rules the land, black masters the waters. I love it because you have like the crimson, like blood on land, and then you have black in the water. It's great. It's great. But yeah, so they decide they want to try to steer back, but it's just not working out well. And so they end up getting attacked. The boat is sinking. They can't use a distance shortening array anymore. They're like deep in the heart of the Blackwater's territory. He's limited their powers there. So the last thing they can think to do as the ship, like the Water Master says he'll stay there trying to help. And the Wind Master again laments that they can't do anything. And so the Water Master stays behind to like try to battle. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean. The ship's in the whirlpool. Everything's battling. And they all jump up on their swords to get up into the air. And I just love the imagery of, you have Ming Yi sitting on top of the handle of the shovel, and the Windmaster's in the like actual shovel part being like, hey guys, like I want fan art of it. It's so cute, right? And then you have, Shilian and Hua Chong, and then Pei Ming on top of his sword, right? And the Water Master stays down to battle the currents. But throughout all of this, what I love is that Shilian tries to like help Hua Chong, because Hua Chong, MXTX doesn't make it as explicit until the very end of chapter 119 when Shilian's about to give mouth to mouth. She doesn't make it explicit that Hua Chong has no power here, that Hua Chong has really made themselves into a human, and the disguise is good enough to fool even Pei Ming and the Watermaster. MX doesn't come out and say Hua Chong doesn't have any power of their own. They kind of just leave us as the audience to interpret that. But it makes more sense now because throughout the chapter, like Shilian is like grabbing Hua Chong's waist, grabbing his hand, holding on to it, holding it tightly. And it's so romantic. And Hua Chong just like squeezes back, right? Just squeezes back and does whatever Shilian tells him to do. He acts his obedient self. Yeah, he wants to put on the best impression for Shilian. And you are rewarded, sir. Maybe, possibly. We'll see. But yeah, I love that Hua Chong is giving them all of this information, and Pei Ming keeps calling him little buddy, being like, little buddy seems quite calm. Little buddy seems like he knows some things. And it's just, there's no way for them to prove it, right? That it's Hua Chong. Which is probably a good thing, because if Hua Chong knew that if Pei Ming and Shi Wudu knew that it was Hua Chong, it would just open up another can of worms, right? I'm sure that Pei Ming has reservations and theories about it, but the fact it's not been proven is... And so then we have this whole thing about coffin wood. I want to go back, callbacks here. He says that there's only one type of wood that's able to float across the Blackwater Demon's lair without sinking. And I kept thinking of Monty Python, be like, if you weigh the same as a duck, you can float in the Blackwater's lair. Like, that's all I kept thinking of. If Shilian weighs the same as a duck, he'll be safe. But Shilian, like, of course, Shilian brings up sandalwood first. God, in every MXTX thing, everything smells of sandalwood. Like, if y'all have smelled sandalwood, I mean, it's nice, but... and then they announced coffin wood. He says, coffin wood. There's no one who's returned alive after they've stumbled into the Blackwater Demon lair except one person. That person was traveling home with his deceased loved one's corpse. When the boat sank, he drifted back to land on top of the coffin. And then Pei Ming says, this little buddy sure knows a lot. It's not much, just know too little, that's all. And so that's interesting. So we get this story, right? That Hua Chong says this story about a person with the body of a loved one on top of the coffin. And that's how they escaped from the Blackwater. So, so I'm curious because that leads me to believe we have established Shilian does not have a good memory. Shilian's memory is not great by any stretch of the word. So that makes me think a couple of things. Like, one, is Hua Chong the person that died, and did Shilian bring him, or did somebody bring him back to shore? But I don't think that's the case. Or did Shilian... We talked about, like, here's where my mind instantly went, and I don't think it's related, but my mind instantly went to when Shilian was the Goshi back with Lan Chan Chu, when Shilian was the Goshi and was killed and their corpse was drug away and chained. That was my immediate thought, and my thought was, okay, did they somehow end up at the lair of the Blackwater and Hua Chong drug them to safety on top of the coffin? That's where my mind went, because it sounds like Hua Chong knows this story personally and was personally either the dead person or the person bringing them back through the lair. One of the two. But which one it is, we don't know. Or how does Hua Chong know this story? Who's this story about that they know of, and why, or how did they learn about this legend? So it's either they were connected to the legend somehow, or they know who it's about. But it seems it seems too intriguing of a story. Like it seems almost romantic. Like someone bringing their loved one back across the Blackwater's lair and on a coffin. Like it just seems too intimate a story for it just to be something random. But again, we don't find out anymore because Pei Ming starts to question who Hua Chong is, and then the Watermaster starts questioning who he is, and then we change the subject altogether. So... mysteries, y'all. Mysteries. But there's something about the coffin and Hua Chong's story that makes me be like, okay, we're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to that at some point, right? I know all of you reading are like, Like just like sitting back there being like, she has no idea. And I don't. So yeah. Anyway, so basically they think that they're gonna make this coffin for them now. And Hua Chong's like, that's not gonna work. It has to be a coffin that's carried a corpse. That's not gonna be good enough. And they're like, well, I thought for a second they were gonna like try to kill Hua Chong or Shi Lian off to make a coffin and put them in and make it work. I thought that's where we were headed with it, but luckily we don't get to that. Instead, the water master starts channeling the water from the outside to raise the boat up. I like the idea of the water from the outside being like a clearer, lighter blue color and it clashing with the black water and making this beautiful artwork of visuals as the boat's being lifted up and then the currents are fighting one another, and that's what creates the whirlpool. I like that a lot. But yeah, so we get the ships turning, the forces of waters are battling, and then Shi Lian loses the Windmaster, the Earthmaster and General Pei for a moment, but then they show up on top of the swords. And then we have like the bonefish attacking them. Like there's so much that happens in these chapters. So much that happens. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, the bonefish come out. They don't know if they're poisonous or not, but they just try to fight them. I like the Pei Ming instantly. I love that Pei Ming instantly slices the one in half and he's like, what was that? Like the tension in this is so good. And then I love that the Windmaster gives Ming Yi such a hard time, like, to like, keep your shovel treasured. It's actually a really nice weapon in all reality. And Ming Yi's like, get lost. the tsundere comes out. Like, Ming Yi's been letting down the tsundere wall to protect the Windmaster, but then it comes back up a little bit, right? And then Shi Lian being like, hang on tight, San Long. And San Long's like, okay. Like, sure thing. I'll hang on as tight as I can. And then these dragons, these bone dragons, come up and tear at them. And the water gushes at them. And Feng Shen, poor Feng Shen, I like that we have established that swords can get elderly. Feng Shen can't go up any higher. He's reached his limits. And Feng Shen, the sword, like crashes down and they all crash into the water, right? And so, but here's the thing. This is the thing that's interesting, is that Shi Lian, he can't swim in this water. Like, he starts to sink. But Hua Chong manages to save him in the body of this human form. So there's something there to it, right? Like, maybe Hua Chong got knocked out or used up too much of his own spiritual power in this little form. But I found it really symbolic that Hua Chong, in the midst of all this despair and demon energy, is able to save Shi Lian. And it seemed to me like he holds Shi Lian up like he's floating. He's technically is a corpse, should have sunk faster than Shi Lian, but he was floating lightly and effortlessly on the water. And he looks down at Shi Lian and he's like, are you all right? And then he realizes the situation is very similar to not long ago, and when they were like in the water with the fetus spirit, and he's like, oh my God. And at that point I was like, is he gonna, I thought, because Shi Lian's been wanting to thank Hua Chong for all that he's done for him. He's been constantly reminded of the fetus spirit and other things where he's like been in close proximity to Hua Chong. He's like, I don't know what to do with these feelings. I thought at this point Shi Lian was gonna kiss him, like to give him a peck on the cheek or something to thank him. I thought we were gonna do that. But instead, he just nods and holds on to to Hua Chong's waist as he like propels him through the water. But I honestly think that the reason Hua Chong is able to float and do all of this is because of the faith he has in Shi Lian and the love that he has. I feel like that's like a symbolic power maybe ghosts get. Now, does Shi Lian still have the ring on his neck? If he still has the ring on his neck, if the ring like somehow contains Hua Chong's ashes, which I've theorized, if it somehow contains the ashes, then maybe the ashes being close to Hua Chong would enable him to like have more power. But I feel like the fact that Hua Chong loves and devotes so much to Shi Lian has something to do with them being able to swim through the water. I don't know. But in any case, they swim through the water to glide and get away from the bone dragons. But when the bone dragons come back, all Hua Chong has to do is click his tongue. He's like, come on. And then they stop. And they like nudge Feng Shen as if it's like pecking it like, oh, forgive us. And then they run away. They scamper away. And Hua Chong says, Gege, now you know. If you're going to get any pets, don't consider those. They're useless trash. So, were the pets the Blackwater's pets, or were they Hua Chong's pets? That's the thing. Were those... I was assuming they were the Blackwater's pets, and that they are just useless because they couldn't attack Xi Lian. Like, all Hua Chong had to do was threaten them, and they were like, oh no, they sensed how strong he was. But he's in the body of a human, so... Or are they Hua Chong's pets that he summoned, and he just used them to separate Xi Lian from the others? Who knows, right? Who knows? In either case, I think it's more that they're the Blackwater's pets, and they just aren't able to stand up against Hua Chong. And he's like, see, if you're going to get some actual pets, make sure they're not useless like them. Like, the Blackwater should be ashamed of them. That's what I think it is, but... Oh my gosh, just... And Xi Lian's like, pets? What? And he's like, just forget about it. And so then Xi Lian, he's worried because now... Okay, this is the part that's weird, though. Suddenly a bone dragon broke through the water surface and shot up into the sky, and Shi Wudu sat on top of the creature's head. So this is the weird thing. As if it says, but he's sitting on top of the bone dragon. His hands clasped in an attack seal. His face was tense as if he was vigorously fighting against some force. The peaceful and calm ocean was now tossing and turning. So it's like the Water Master is back to fighting against his trial, but it's weird that he's sitting on top of the bone dragon's head. Like, what? What? He scanned across the surroundings under the dim moonlight. Instead of finding his comrades, he was being swallowed up by a huge shadow. He spun around, his eyes widened at the sight of the ginormous wave that was as tall as the sky. And the next seconds, it was engulfing him in complete darkness. I'm like, the water... I've been confusing the Water Master and the Blackwater this entire time. The Water Master and the Blackwater can't be the same being, right? There's a heavenly official of that strength can't also be a supreme ghost. There's no way. There's no way. So, I don't know why he'd be sitting atop of the dragon's head doing that. Like, it almost seemed like he wanted to split them apart, right? It almost gets the impression like he wanted to split them apart, but that doesn't make any sense. So, MXTX, what are we doing? What are we doing? You're making me think too much about this. I, again, don't know if I can wait to read the next set of chapters, and I'm sorry ahead of time. I really am. I'm very, very sorry. I don't think I can wait. I just don't think I can. But something's weird. Something is weird about this whole deal. Something is so weird about this whole circumstance. The fact that this heavenly trial has gotten out of hand so quickly. The fact that Hua Chong does not like the Water Tyrant, which is the Water Master, but seems to know a bit about the Blackwater. But there's some connection there, and I don't know. MXTX hasn't given us enough to make sure what it is. I don't think the Blackwater and the Water Master are the same person. They can't be. They can't. One is a supreme ghost, one is a heavenly official. They cannot be the same. So, but it's really weird. Like, what if they were working together? What if the Water Master and the Blackwater were working together? What if they were? What if they were working together? And this was all just a way for them to get... Because they left earlier than they thought they should have. Okay, let's think about this for a hot second. The Water Master left earlier than they had anticipated. Maybe they predicted or realized Xi Lian was there and Ming Yi was there. But... Or maybe... I don't know. But, okay. I'm not going to theorize anymore. Y'all are probably sitting there being like, Romania. But yeah, I just, something's up. Something's weird, and MXTX isn't telling us the full story yet, and it's frustrating me because there's something not being said. Like, the Water Master knows something they're not letting on. There's something weird up with the Blackwater. Hua Chong obviously is not telling everything that he knows. It's all weird. And that last scene before they all crash, before the water crashes down, Xi Lian and Hua Chong, though, is very weird. That scene is very weird, and it makes me, like, curious why is it the way that it is? Why was the Water Master suddenly back in the game against the dragons. Why did the dragons come to him? Why was he suddenly back into it? Why wasn't he securing his brother and Pei Ming and Ming Yi? What's going on? It seems like he was trying to separate Shilian and Hua Chong from them, but I don't know why, and I don't know what the reason is, or if that's even the case. So, very frustrating. Very frustrating. And so then we have our Little Mermaid scene where Hua Chong has been shucked up on the shore, and Shilian's like, breathe, Hua Chong, why aren't you breathing? And there's no response. And he's like, don't joke around, San Long. And then that's when Shilian starts to panic, and he puts his head against Hua Chong's chest and hears a heartbeat, which should not happen if he's a ghost. And he's like, well, crap, if Hua Chong in his true form isn't able to drown, what about when he becomes this human? What if the disguise is so real, maybe he does have a heartbeat, maybe he can drown. And Shilian is like having a long internal debate. He's like, he has a long internal debate, and he decides to perform CPR, but I'm not sure that's how CPR works, Shilian. Because he's like, and of course, as he's like cupping his face, panicked, he's like, the features on his face were beyond stunning. I'm like, oh my God, Shilian, come on. He cups Hua Chong's face like this and thinks about what he was about to do, which made it extremely difficult for him to calm down. And sitting in this tangled position, he made sure that no one was around. And of course, I like that he's straddling Hua Chong in this position. He's like looking around being like, I hope nobody's watching. And he's like, he's like, there's no signs of waking up. This was it. He grits his teeth. I love that he says, I apologize in advance. And that's the moment. And the thing about it is he claps his hands together, made a silent prayer, and bent down with his eyes closed to kiss Hua Chong and to like breathe air into him. And that's when Hua Chong's eyes open like, oh my God. So Shilian doesn't know he's awake. He's going to kiss him. And he has kissed him. He is kissing. He pressed his lips against Hua Chong, and that's when Hua Chong wakes up. So the question is Hua Chong... the question is Hua Chong going... Is Hua Chong going to... Hua Chong's not going to turn him away instantly. He's going to lean in. He's going to be like, okay, let's kiss. But Shilian is going to be mortified, right? He's going to be mortified. But now we're on equal terms. Now Hua Chong has initiated the kiss. Shilian has initiated the kiss. And now we just need them both to mutually come together. Whether it happens this volume or not, I don't know. But yeah, these chapters were so good in establishing some lore about the Blackwater, how the Blackwater and Hua Chong are related in terms of them being supremes, just kind of like the difference between land and sea, in establishing the Windmaster is sadly like at their wits' end because they can't do anything. Ming Yi's trying to be BFF forever. Pei Ming is doing the best he can to help his bro. The Watermaster's being weird, and I don't know what to make of it. The Blackwater's being reclusive, and the Blackwater is threatening because we don't see him. Like, I feel like Hua Chong, again, we talk about polar opposites. I feel like Hua Chong is threatening because we do see him, and he has this imposing, threatening figure. But the Blackwater is threatening because we don't see him. Like, we have no clue what's going on. So, I'm not going to be able to wait. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm going on a trip. That's my excuse. I'm going to be looking at chapters 120 and 121 next week. They're a shorter set of chapters, but if they're anything like these, there's going to be still a lot to talk about. So I'm sorry, y'all. I hope y'all have a wonderful week. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I feel like this discussion was all over the place with theories, but there's so much MXTX is just hinting at that we don't have concrete evidence about. I know that I told everybody in the Discord with chapters 116 and 117, I feel like chapters 116 and 117 instantly dated the last 3 weeks worth of theorizing. Like, I theorized since chapters 105, like what was going on. And the moment that chapters 116 and 117 happen, the exposition like instantly disproves and proves everything. So I realize that in the next few weeks, I may be proven drastically wrong by what we find out from these chapters. But I guess in tune with the story, we'll just have to go with the flow. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. Please no spoilers, but I will see you all next week with chapters 120 and 121 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye.